Good. Now I'll act sane. Oh, I skipped through this. These are just quotes from Jesus. I don't know why I put them on there. Actually, I'll go back. I'll go back to this. Oh, cats, funny cats. Seeing something on the news. They have this thing, canine. Is it canine for something? For warriors or something like that, where they use dogs for returning veterans, you know, to kind of comfort them, and they use dogs, you know, to pet the dog, you know. Have you seen this as well? Whenever they have those school shootings, the recovery dogs show up, bring dogs to the school, you know, you can pet the dog and it kind of calms people down. Why don't they bring cats? Huh? Because cats stink? No, they don't. You don't have to wash them. They wash themselves.
As animals, I don't think they're good.
I don't like cats. Cats are cool, baby. Bring a dog, bring a cat. It's just cats will not bow down. Anyways, you're right, sir. Maybe if you did bring cats to the veterans, it might depress them even more. Huh? That's true. That's true. But dogs do the whole peeing and pooping on everything outside routine. Apparently, sir, you have never stepped in someone else's dog's poop. Well, anyways, I guess you can train dogs to go to the bathroom in a litter box, but I guess you could. But anyways, moving along. Because I wanted to backtrack a little bit, I know I started on kerygma, but I did want to backtrack a little bit just because I believe that some people might not have been paying attention because I screwed up the time. So I just want to make sure, and I also forgot to mention this, so, you know, whatever. And I'm the teacher, so I'll do what I want. Yeah. Captive audience, Ms. Martinez. Going to be a tough nut to crack, Ms. Martinez. All right? Okay. Remember our resources for our sources and our methods of study for Jesus. Of course, the ultimate source is Jesus. As with any historical figure, well, any figure, forget historical anything. As with any figure, the class is about Jesus, so he's going to be our ultimate resource in some way. Okay, he's going to be the person you're talking about, just like in any course, a course on William Shakespeare and his plays. Your ultimate resource is going to be the guy, his life, why he wrote these plays, did he write these plays, stuff like that. Same thing with Jesus, same kind of questions can be asked. Did Jesus do this? Did he say this? If he did do something and say something, what does that tell us about him? Okay. And then we have quote-unquote scientific resources, literature, archaeology, I mentioned. Well, a lot of it for the ancient world is going to be basically manuscripts and archaeology. Okay? And that's not surprising. I mentioned that I went to Mount Vernon in the last class, and what did I see, Mr. Alducci? What did I see at Mount Vernon when I went to Mount Vernon, George Washington's old home? Hold on, give him a chance. Give him a chance. Mr. Alducci. You don't know. Don't say that. Okay, Mr. Karolakis, you're up. His hair. So that's kind of archaeological in a way. Because it's it's a physical piece of evidence. I don't know if that would be. I wonder what they would call that. It's because archaeologists do dig up bones and pieces of hair of people and old skeletons and stuff like that. Mostly pottery, though. I have a friend who's an archaeologist. You believe because you think it's not all Indiana Jones, baby. It's not. Of course, that's Hollywood. looking for the Holy Grail or the Ark of the Covenant, or what was the one with the aliens? The Nazis were looking for aliens. Was that the Golden Skull? I still don't know what the heck that movie was about. I just don't know. Yeah, it sucked. I hated it. I'll only do the up to Sean Connery. That I like. And then after that, I'm not going to like. But let's see. I guess you could say archaeological. I was going to mention something else, but I lost it. Lost the thought. Oh well. What are you going to do? So you look at books and old manuscripts and stuff like that. If there are people around, if it's a more recent person, like say, I mean, they're going big on this. I'm going to rant now, so I'm just going to let you know, Ms. Kevett, this is my rant. Because I was born in 1972. In the last 30 years, 40-some years, I have been imprisoned by the baby boomers. If you watch television, you watch movies, you listen to the pop culture, it always seems to come back to like the same thing, the 60s, maybe the 70s, but you know, like JFK, can't get rid of him. How many movies have they had about JFK, or the 60s, or the Civil Rights Movement, or the Beatles, the whole era of the 60s? And now it's coming around again. I was watching 60 Minutes. The humor just flows. It just flows, Mr. Lembo. I can't stop it. It's like I try to turn the faucet off, but it's still leaking, you know? I was watching 60 Minutes, and they had, I think, Morley Safer talking to some guy. What was he talking to? Some photographer from the 60s who got caught up with JFK, and then his brother Bobby. It was Bobby, right? And I know why they're doing this, because Tom Hanks has some documentary in the 60s coming out on CNN. Haven't we gone over? Isn't this like overturned dirt by now? Can't we move on to like hair metal in the 80s? Please? Let's talk about the Reagan assassination attempt, where he did almost die. Actually, it's kind of a funny story. He... you know, the guy shot, I forget the guy's name. You know, whatever, it escapes me. Huh? Yes, John Hinckley Jr. Shot at the president, totally missed him, you know, but he didn't miss him, because as they were actually pushing, if they had just left the president alone, Ronald Reagan at the time, he would have been fine, but his Secret Service helper pushed him into the limousine, and as he was doing that, he put him in the direct line of fire of one of the bullets that had ricocheted off the car and had struck Reagan like near the heart. When they got into the limousine, they're driving away, you know, whoo, whoo, you know, that was a close one, baby, you know. And Reagan is kind of like, I don't feel so good. I'm not breathing very well, you know. That's not fun. You don't find humor? Okay, well, whatever. And, you know, the guys rushed him to the hospital just to get him checked out. But actually, he could have and possibly would have died. But anyways, so I don't know. Maybe when you're in your 40s, you'll be bedeviled by people like me who are constantly talking about Motley Crue and, I don't know, the Challenger disaster and, no. My point is that these people are still around. They were talking to this photographer. You have a direct connection to JFK. Guy knew him. You also have a direct connection to the Beatles. The guy hung around with the Beatles a lot. Oh, through most of their career, even after they broke up. So you still got... So even after... Who's dead in the Beatles now? Paul McCartney is still alive, isn't he? Ringo, I think, is still alive. I think what's his name? There's always a what's his name. That's just my bad memory. I can see his face. George Harrison. He's dead. Yes, he's dead. And who's the fourth guy? Got Paul. Oh, John Lennon is dead, of course, because he was murdered. So you got two left. So when those dudes die, let's say this photographer outlives them. All you've got is him. Is he, I should say. Is he, Ms. Miller? So if you wanted to find out about the Beatles, let's say, all you've got are the books on the archaeology, the stuff they've left behind, their music, their lyrics that they wrote and stuff like that. You don't have the people there anymore. Well, you've got this guy, Joe Schmo, whatever, who was a photographer who hung out with them and can give you his insights on how he looked at them. And also JFK. He took pictures of the early JFK. And Bobby Kennedy as well. This guy was all over the place. Anyways, because he was lucky. I mean, and he said he was lucky. He was just in the right place at the right time, took a very nice picture of JFK. JFK kind of befriended him, and it all kind of snowballed from there. Okay? The same thing, Ms. Girardi, we should expect with Jesus. It should not surprise you, especially 2,000 years later, that what do we got? We got literature written about him by people who claim to have claim to have known him, or claim to have known people who knew him, had known him. We've got archaeology, whatever we can dig up. I showed you the Shroud of Turin. The church says it's real. As I said, what did I say, Mr. Dunaleski? What did I say for me? What percentage did I give that I think it's probably real? What percentage did I give? Yeah, it's about 90% sure. It has enough of that, kind of like cool, weird factor that kind of makes me think that it's kind of true, But also, there's that part of me that would like it to be true. So I can't deny that, And to control that, you also have to look at the evidence, If it was clear that, if someone just painted Ronald McDonald on a shroud and said, "This is Jesus," I'm gonna say, well, I can believe that if I want to. I can believe that's the face of Jesus in my taco, or appearing in the mold on my bathroom wall. But how do you know? It's something that looks like a bearded man with long hair. That could be what? James Hetfield from Metallica. The old Metallica, not when they went lame and cut their hair and became trendy. I was never a Metallica fan anyways, but I had a friend who loved them in high school when they were still underground, before they became popular. Or a Blessed Virgin Mary. Okay, it looks like a woman with a veil. Why is that Mary? Why isn't any other woman with a veil? Saint Elizabeth. You know how the Blessed Virgin Mary was dressed 2,000 years ago? No. But the person knows what the statues look like in the church. Mary always wore white and blue. And not just blue, like baby blue. Although that's wrong, because in the Eastern tradition, as you know, Mr. Karolekis, the Virgin is almost always shown with a very dark royal blue. Sometimes dark red, but dark royal blue. And all blue. Why? What's the significance of the blue color on statues of the Blessed Virgin Mary? What's the significance? Congrats, you want to take a shot?
Not at all.
Nope. Okay, at least you're honest. Go ahead.
I'm not too sure, but innocence?
Innocence. Good. So you're on the right track. Yes. It's not right. But you're on the right track. Okay? You're not far away. You've gotten the ball rolling, Ms. Lehman. Thank you. What do you think? Think of other things that, say, Catholics and other Christians believe about the Virgin Mary, the Mother of Jesus. Huh? Purity. In what sense? Purity from what? Sin. Why do I keep coming back to you, sir? God bless you, sir. Purity from sin, yes. That Mary was immaculate. She was sinless. And the symbol, it's only a symbol, a color is a color, okay? The symbol that she is without sin in Eastern Christianity and in Western Christianity, although it's kind of been lost, but it's still there on the statues. But in the pictures you'll see Mary in blue garments. It's meant to. Does that mean Mary wore blue all day? No, I mean I don't think so. Because it's royal blue. It's associated with royalty, very fine color. But it's meant to show her purity from sin, that she was sinless. So right there, in the symbolism of of a picture you might see of the Virgin Mary, or a statue with her in blue or with a blue veil, okay, you're already being taught something by the church. Doctrine is being imparted. You don't know it. You don't know it. Now you do.
Why blue though? Or why red?
It was cultural. That's what the emperors wore. That's what the rich people wore. They wore.
Not the royal accent because. But, why is that symbolizing purity of sin?
Don't know. I can give you my thoughts, but they're just my thoughts. I mean, it could. It's just my thought. It could be that dark colors hide stains. Ever watch that guy on Food Network? It's a British guy. He used to be a Navy guy. Guy's totally built. He's got, very, very buff guy. Let's see. What's his name? I forget his name. Irvine. That's right. Yes. He always wears. He's a chef. He was in the British Navy. Then he became a chef. I like him. He's cute. He's got, But anyways, but he's married now, so he's not available anymore. So, not that I'm saying, but although he is wealthy. We could have a platonic relationship, couldn't we? No. Okay, Mr. Moving along, sir. Okay. Anyways, Robert Irvine. He always wears black shirts. That's his stock in trade. And people always ask him, why do you only wear black shirts? Because chefs always wear white, or the traditional color for chefs is white. Yes? Custom, tradition, big floppy hat, white. Okay, but he wears black. And yes, I know that not all chefs wear white, big floppy hats anymore. And so I understand that. But the traditional thing is, if you wanted to dress up, if you're in a play, and they want to dress you up in a character like a chef, give you like a white floppy hat, and stuff like that. They're going to make you try to look like a chef, what people typically, traditionally, customarily thought a chef looked like. Anyways, God bless you. Why does he wear black? Because it hides sweat marks. This is what he says. It hides sweat marks and it hides dirt and stains. Could be that. Could be. But I'm reaching.
Yeah.
Okay?
That makes is it more because she to be light then, because she has nothing tied that she's pure? You know what I mean? Like light.
Why did they? Well, you have to remember the doctrine is governing the color. Okay, so that's a good question because the doctrine is governing the color. Because they could have chosen any color. Why would they choose blue? Well, because there must be something about blue for them purity. But all I can tell you is that ultimately, what I do know is that it's cultural. And a lot of times it's, if you want to do an economic, a socio-economic, a social, an economic and political analysis, some people like to do with the Bible, you could look at the culture and see that the rich, the powerful, okay, the privileged were wearing these colors. And so Christians were like taking them for Christ and for the saints and applying them in different ways with different symbolism. So it's kind of like subversive in a way. Okay? Purple. Purple is usually associated with royalty and stuff like that. Purple's awful, Miss Kevin. Purple's a beautiful color. I love purple. But purple garments and stuff like that, if you're watching Gladiator and you see, women dressed up in beautiful purples, they're awful. You know why? They smelled like urine. They smelled like pee. Because you get purple from some dye, it's in like some kind of clam, what are they called, cephalopods, or like a shellfish type thing, and there's some gland or something in it, and they figured out, you could squeeze out this dye, and it makes like kind of a purplish color, but not bright purple, So it's very hard to make, because first of all, to get these things, to get enough of the dye, that was hard enough. But after all that work, you weren't getting the right color. God bless you. Till someone found, I don't know, maybe some guy was drunk, didn't want to pee on the ground. You know how men are. They never leave the seat down, Always, they never. I don't know why those jokes don't kill with the ladies. I think they're yeah, okay. But someone peed, or somehow urine got mixed with the dye, and it became a bright, beautiful purple. So now you could use it to dye the clothes. The problem is, once the clothes were dyed and dried, I meant that for you, woman. I'm trying to get you to smile, but it's okay, Miss Valenti. Dyed and dried, they smelled of urine, but they looked great. And you looked great in them. So remember that, ladies, the next time you're wearing pumps. They kill your ankles, they hurt like hell, but you look smoking. And people have been doing it for centuries. Walking around in stinky, pee-smelling garments because they looked great. So purple was worn by, maybe that's God's little flipping the bird to the elite. I don't know. Let's see what I can get these dummies to do. Wearing garments soaked in urine. Yeah! Okay? So with Jesus, we should not expect anything different. We can't talk to people who knew Jesus anymore. I didn't know him. Big surprise. Didn't know him. And I'm going to assume, and yes, I know what assume means, thank you. Actually, no, it doesn't make an ass out of you and me. If I assume and I'm wrong, I'm the ass. Why are you including me in it? Why am I including you in it? Isn't it? No, it makes an ass out of you. Forget the me. But anyway, I'm going to assume that no one in this class knew Jesus of Nazareth. Yes? I don't know. Miss Kibbett's a little sneaky. Maybe she has a time machine somewhere. I don't know. But I'm going to assume. So how do you know? How do you know what he looks like? How do you know what he said? What he felt? This is a burning question because, you got stuff in the news, stuff in culture, stuff in society, all sorts of things going on. I mentioned kind of indirectly, obliquely. I got to show off. I'm a PhD. Got to show off. It adds a little bit of my time to purgatory, so don't worry about it. I will suffer for it. Indirect. About gay marriage, two women, or two men who love each other and want to enter into a legal covenant of love, be legally recognized with the same rights and benefits as a man or a woman. Why not two men and a woman? Some people like that. From some videos I've seen. Whoa. Too much TMI, Mr. Dunn. Why not a man and two women? Polygamy's hot now. Look at the cable channels. Look at the cable channels. You got dudes with like 5 wives? Are their civil rights being violated? I don't know. I'll save that for moral theology. But why do I bring it up? Because, people will, one time, people would bring up religious arguments. What would Jesus do? What would Jesus want? Who has the right to speak for Jesus? Who can speak for Jesus? Your priest at church? You chewing your gum? No, I'm sure people were eating seeds and stuff while Jesus was preaching too. It's like eating some dates. And they got to spit out the they have some of these fruits have seeds and love your enemies. Yeah. Anyways, interesting. Because Pope Francis didn't know Jesus. Not in the flesh. Not in the flesh. So it's a question. Maybe it sounds theoretical to you, but it doesn't to me. Because when I look out at the world and the questions people are asking about life and morality, even forget morality, just theology. Is Jesus the Son of God? Okay? Who do you go to ask that question? It'd be nice if you could go to someone who knew him, could confirm. But even then, Mizreen, let's say the person you go to confirm is wrong. Maybe this person, that was his impression of Jesus. He saw everything Jesus did is like, wow, godlike. But you're trusting that person. So don't be afraid. Oh, there they go again. Happy faces. That's what I looked like in high school. Happy face. Well, not like that. I'm a dude, but no. I mean, and I wasn't wearing a skirt and that. Da-da-da-dee. So the resources we have about Jesus, the stuff we have about Jesus, naturally comes second hand and third hand and 50th hand. I mean, I'm going to wager that many of you, if not all of you, learned about Jesus from your parents, first of all, from your family members. Then I would assume you got it from your church, okay? From your pastor or from other people there, or even from Bible school or whatever you remember or don't remember. And our resources about Jesus, the manuscripts, the archaeology, comes after the fact. And that's as it should be. With any historical figure, it comes after the fact. Reporters were not hanging outside the cave asking if Jesus were born yet. What do you think? She's born yet? She's about ready? Well, she's dilated. St. Joseph is a mess, but, he's on his way, I think. Okay. I've already got my copy. Son of God, born in Bethlehem. Or it could have been like The Life of Brian. Anyone see that movie, The Life of Brian? Monty Python? Where the 3 wise men show up and they show up at the wrong place. They're honoring the wrong baby. No? Anyways, maybe I'll show that to you. So it's people weren't expecting the Christ to be born in Bethlehem. Bethlehem. Oh, I'm thinking about food, baby. Bethlehem. Sometime in 6 BC, maybe, in probably the spring, not in the winter time. April maybe. That's what one would expect. You can't write or tell stories about someone before he's existed. You can't proclaim him and what he said and did before he says and does those things. And that applies to Jesus just like it applies to other historical figures. Okay? I mention this because people can get scared. They get worried that, Jesus is over here. You don't think so much about Jesus in that context, But other people, you do. George Washington, I mentioned JFK, other historical figures. Makes perfect sense. You have Julius Caesar. Doesn't trouble you in the least. Doesn't trouble you in the least. Our first writings about Julius Caesar, our writings from him are all copies. Nothing direct from him. Julius Caesar. And they were written hundreds of years after he lived. The Buddha, Gautama Siddhartha, great man, I assume a holy man, wise man. From what I've read of his teachings, seemed to be a very wise man. Seemed to be a good man. I hope he's in heaven. We don't know. We don't know when he was born. We can't really date it very well because all the stuff that was passed on by word of mouth was only written down much later, centuries later. And no one really, people know this, but no one gets all hepped up about it. But if you talk about Jesus, and I watched this documentary on Netflix. Netflix is great. You can find all sorts of great, old movies on it and stuff like that. I like the horror films, like the, a lot of stuff that I found on Netflix has stunk, but there are a few diamonds in the rough and a few jewels that I found on it. But the documentaries, that's also interesting. Some of that stuff is interesting. And they had one about, what was it called? Not the True Jesus. I forget the title of it. Anyways, but it was this whole thing about Jesus didn't really exist. It's all been a myth that was created by, I don't know. They never seem to say who created this myth. But somehow Jesus is a myth because the testimonies we have, are only indirect. And some of the testimonies are 30 years after the fact. 30 years. That's a lifetime. No, it's not. If you're 14 years old, 30 years seems like a lifetime. Man, you're 30? You're old. And now I'm 41, and the older people tell me how young I am. I'm like, oh, thank you. I appreciate that. I don't feel young. I feel like I'm one day closer to death, but I appreciate that. Okay? Well, anyways, because it's Jesus. I don't know why Jesus get hepped up about it, but it's not surprising. Jesus' history was not contemporary with him. Okay? Once people realized his significance, and people took notice of it, you see writings appear, and things don't appear immediately. Information has to be interpreted and digested. And that's another thing people sometimes have problems with. Jesus was not a book writer. He was a teacher and he did things, okay? But he didn't spend his time. Put those handprints on the window. Was that me? Or was that somebody else? Jesus, Jesus. Who said that? Was that you? Was that you? Yeah, right, blame him. Yeah, okay, I got your number, Miss Cardenas. Anyways, same thing with Jesus. Jesus didn't write stuff, so no, we don't have any direct writings from him. We have writings from people who were believers. They were believers. They believed in him. That's why he mattered to them. They did not write the Gospels, which I'm hoping you've started to read, at least the Gospel of Mark. They did not, you'll notice they're not histories. They're not meant to be histories. They do have historical information in there and data, which I'll get into later, which you will see, but by later I mean another class, not this one. I can't fit it all into this one. But that was not their primary purpose. They were believers in him. That's why Jesus was significant, was meaningful. Because Jesus, believe it or not, was not that significant an historical figure. Now he is. Now he is. Because you've got 2 billion followers of Jesus, or people who claim to be followers of Jesus, in the world. So, now, in 2000 and whatever, Jesus is an historical force to be reckoned with. You know, people make T-shirts with Jesus saying, you know, people wear little things. What would Jesus do on their wrist? They make movies about Jesus. You know, now, but 2,000 years ago, that wasn't happening. That explains another reason why there's not a great wealth of historical information. Why didn't the Romans notice Jesus? Why didn't the Greeks notice Jesus? Because he was a nobody. They didn't know he existed. He lived in the boondocks of the Roman Empire, a place that the Romans didn't care about to begin with because it was filled with Jews. And the Jews were troublesome to the Romans. But even within Judaism, even in Palestine, you know, how many people knew of this guy Jesus of Nazareth? Who knows? Sometimes the indications are not everybody knew. Believe it or not everyone knew who Jesus of Nazareth was. Despite all of his movies. Despite the efforts of Mel Gibson. Jesus. In some places of the world, believe it or not, even some of the corners of Palestine, Jesus was like, who are you? I'm Jesus. Never heard of you. I'm the crippled guy, you know, the lepers. Oh, you're that dude. Hey, Jesus. So even if our information is written, we don't have a lot of it. We have some. And it's filtered, our best information is filtered through that of believers. They wanted to write about Jesus. And they weren't writing histories, they were writing to bring other people to belief. Either to confirm the belief of those who already believed, say, you know, you want stories about Jesus because you believe in him? I'll give you some stories about Jesus. But some of the gospel writers were like, I'll give you stories about Jesus. If you believe, that's wonderful, but I also want... they had an eye towards the outside crowd, that maybe some people might read this and come to faith in Jesus the Messiah. Okay? So that's what's going on in the Gospels. However, I mentioned that. That doesn't mean there isn't history in the Gospels. As I showed you, that we don't have historical documents that mention Jesus, or possibly artifacts. I'll get to this artifact later on another PowerPoint. I'll go into it in more detail. It's a reference to Pontius Pilate, who is a major factor in the story of Jesus. Once again, a nobody, really not anyone important by Roman standards. You know, he was an underling. I mean, he was like in the government. You know how you have the assistant to the undersecretary of the committee on weights and measures? That's basically what Pontius Pilate was. I mean, he was a ruler, a governor of a small area in the Roman Empire that was constantly changing hands anyways. I mean, the rulerships were constantly changing hands, maybe because no one wanted to be there. Okay? But we know he existed, so we have some evidence of that, some historical evidence. This is an interesting one. I'll come to this as well in another lecture, but I just want to show it to you. A box in which there were bones. So archaeologists, eggheads, call it a bone box. No, they call it an ossuary, but you don't need to know that now. Of some guy named John Yehochanan, it's a version of John, the name John, but crucifixion. This man was crucified. So this gives us some interesting archaeological evidence and information about the practice of crucifixion during the time of Jesus. Okay? Okay? Tradition, customs. Here the priest is facing people with a host. It's called a host, the bread, which is big. It's a big one, big round one. Okay? Look at the garments he's wearing. He's a bishop. He's wearing kind of a toga-like vestment. 6 candles, actually 7 when a bishop, you can't see the 7th somewhere. I don't remember why. Here's my dude. You can't see his face because he's facing east. facing towards God in prayer. But this is Patriarch Sviatoslav celebrating the Lord's Supper. He is the head of the Ukrainian Catholic Church, and he is in communion with Francis of Rome. Sviatoslav, a very young man. Customs, traditions. You'll notice that these are all bishops because they wear crowns. They don't call them mitres in the East. They're called crowns. 6 of one, half a dozen of the other, as they say. A mitre is a mitre is a mitre. You can call it a mitre. You can call it a crown. Whatever. So they're probably bishops. Sometimes priests will wear crowns as well when they're like monsignors, called archpriests. I love the East because the East is always more verbose than the West. In the Western Church, you want to kind of cut to the chase. Then the just Monsignor, hey, But in the East, I'm trying to remember, it's the mitred archpriest, something like that. And you always have to address the guy as that during the liturgy. The deacon is like, "Oh, mitred archpriest, please give me your blessing. Give me your blessing." Anyway, so these are bishops. Notice they wear different garments. Those things don't look so much like togas as they do kind of like deacon's vestments. If you're in the Western Church, it's not. But it's kind of like, it's kind of like a long shirt. Okay, and he wears this piece called an epignation. It's a stiff piece of cloth. I don't know why. I'd have to look it up. I don't know where it came from. And he wears a big stole, epignation, or an epignation. I say epignation, I'll anglicize it. And he wears like this big stole. Sometimes you'll see the Pope will wear something like this, and certain bishops will, like archbishops. They have a kind of thin white stole to wear that kind of has a piece that hangs down. So it's similar to that, okay? And other bishops do the same. Notice he's not facing the people as Cardinal Dolan was. What's his first name again? It's not John Dolan. The Cardinal Archbishop of New York is Dolan. I forget his first name. Does anyone remember? Do me a solid. Help me out. Archbishop John. I want to say John Dolan. That doesn't sound right. Whatever. Anyways, so not facing. I mean, you don't have to face the people, but most priests do. Probably. Well, there was a day when they get in trouble if they didn't face the people. Nowadays, they probably just think you're some kooky traditionalist if you faced the same way as the people in prayer. Let's see. Yeah, I mean, you can see the tabernacle on the altar. This is where the body and blood of Christ is reserved. On the altar, the gospel book is placed there, etc. and so forth. It's a lot livelier. You got a lot more colors going on in the Eastern Church. So the customs are different, but it's exactly the same. I mean, they're celebrating the Lord's Supper. The sacrifice of Christ's body and blood from the cross is being made present again. Both believe the same thing. The bread is changed into the body of Christ. The wine is changed into the blood of Christ. Okay? So we have the oral preaching of the gospel, tradition, which is not the same as customs, even though the same. Well, why do we use the same word? Because I don't know. But it's you just got to be aware. It's kind of like when anyone taking French. Anyone taking French here at Caldwell? We have French, don't we? Yeah, we have French. Anyone taking French? No one's taking French? Anyone take French in high school? No one took French in high school? Not even in high school? You don't want to tell me. You're hiding on me. Not many Frenchmen here. But maybe you've heard, if you go to a restaurant and order poisson, you're not going to get the same thing as if you order poisson. What's the difference? I tell the chef or the garçon, Although I don't think you're supposed to use that word anymore. I think it's demeaning, considered demeaning now in France. That's just what I've heard. But, Miss Kevitt, if you are the waiter, the waitress at a French restaurant and I order poisson, what are you going to bring me? Good. Because what you do bring could hurt me. Poisson. Yes. We can thank the Norman French for having invaded England 1,000 years ago and giving us a large portion of their French-Latin vocabulary. However, you don't want to order that. You want to order this. Poisson. Not poison. Poisson. What is poisson? What is poisson? Huh? Why do you say that? You're just guessing. No, you're right. Fish. It's an old joke. You ever take French in school? Teachers will do that to teach you the difference in French between different pronunciations. You've got to be accurate, you know. If I say to you, sit down, not a problem. If my S is a little bit off, like a sh, like, what's he doing? Is he swearing at us? Or maybe you heard in the news, what was it, months ago, oxygen is overrated. Okay. What's that all about?
It's my friend is swimming.
Oh, okay. Swimming for what? Caldwell swimming or other?
Not high school.
Oh, interesting. Oxygen is overrated. But don't they breathe when they swim? Don't they go... Don't they still... So they still recognize the need to breathe, that oxygen therefore is not overrated.
Because they go under the water more, so under the water is longer. So they don't have to always come up fast all the time.
Okay. Ask him to do a meet without breathing. Oxygen is overrated. Interesting. Interesting! Where was I? Oh, yes. Why was I saying that? Why was I even talking about that? How did I get onto that? What was I... Okay, let's go back.
Something about the news.
Yes, but I'm going to ignore that. I'm going to put that away because that's just another example. I think I've given my example, and I think it's a pretty good one. I think you understand what I'm trying to tell you. No, before I went into French class, I went to this slide for written stuff, but before that, oral tradition. Oh, yes. Okay, good. You know, you just have to deal with it. You have to deal with it in any field of study. You're going to have confusing words, and why can't they say this and not that to differentiate? Well, that's what gives me a job. You know, I'm differentiating for you. So I will try and trick you, and ask you questions, try to make sure you understand what is handed on by the church, the message about Jesus, as opposed to how it is handed on. Through vestments that are worn, through colors that are used, languages that are used. I used Latin in the last class. That's tradition. Some of the tradition of the church, the preaching about Jesus, has been written down. Scripture. Escritura. Escritura. What's it in Portuguese? It's escritura? Really? You sure you're not Spanish?
Yeah.
You sure someone taught you Spanish and they told you it's Portuguese? No. I'm just messing with you. Spanish. I know. Okay, we have written. Don't worry about that direct, indirect. Okay, just that we have written materials. This is a cool picture I put up there. It's from the Gospel of John. It's our earliest, Papyrus 52. Yes, it's our earliest fragment of the New Testament, or our earliest fragment of John. I forget which, but anyways, it's one of the earliest witnesses, manuscript witnesses we have to the Gospels. It's written there in Greek, ancient Greek, so the letters, are a little bit different, but basically the same as Greek today. Right? Only have fragments because papyrus is very fragile material. It's paper. That's where we get our word paper from, papyrus. Okay, and all it is plant material. You take the kind of like the fibrous inside of a plant, a reed, for example. Reed. We got them here in New Jersey. You'll see them. You go down near the shore, you got the reeds, the big, thin things that stick up. I'm talking about. They're green, kind of yellowish. The reed. No, we got them all over the place here in New Jersey. Anyways. You cut them open, you beat them to death for like 1 million years, and after you're beating these things, eventually the pulp and the fibrous material will start to kind of come together, and once it's dried, it will be like one piece. It's like one piece, and people found that you could take ink, I call it ink, I don't know what they call it, but something to write on it. Because before that, you had to carve in wax and stuff. It was a lot harder to write. If you want to take notes for a class, you were not saving your notes. Your notes, you carved them in wax with a stylus, and then, when you needed to reuse it, you just melted the wax and started over again. There was no way of saving your notes. But papyrus was a great invention because you could write stuff down now, and it would save it. Problem is that it's very biodegradable, so it can fall apart very easily and not rot. That's the word I'm looking for. What's the word I'm looking for? Not rot. What does paper do? It doesn't rot. What does it do? Decompose, I guess I could say. Decomposes very quickly. Falls apart very quickly. Okay? So, we're very lucky. Most of the earliest writings, and any ancient writings that were written on papyrus, you're mostly going to find tons of little fragments that then have to be pieced together. And so they found this little one. Why am I going over here? Oh, that's right. Let me make sure where are my notes? Oh, okay. Sorry, I'm moving around. Oh, forget about that. But this is another example of a papyrus document, the Gospel of Thomas. Don't worry about that. So sacred scriptures is what this is called. This iteration, this version of tradition, this handing on, it's just a different way of handing on. One way is by preaching, and one way is by writing. And for the Catholic Church, both are valid. Both are valid. Not for all Christians, though. Some Christians, you drive by this, First Baptist Church, and you'll see a sign out front, Bible-believing Baptist Church. And when you go to Evangelical Church, and you go in there and say, I'm looking for a Bible-believing church, baby, just the Bible. Well, you've come to the right place, sir. Although we do teach the Immaculate Conception of Mary. Ah! No. I once was looking into applying to be a minister at a Presbyterian church. Why not? Why not? It's all ecumenism. I'm a Bible believer. It's just that they probably wouldn't want to read the Bible I'm reading from. Anyways. Still going on? So not all Christians would accept that. The oral part of it is okay, but it's kind of like a necessary evil. You know, you have to preach the gospel to pass it on. But it's always the Bible. The Bible is the standard, okay? The written writings. Well, the ancient churches, here he comes. The ancient churches, like the Catholic Church, the Orthodox churches, that's never been the way. The oral preaching and the written preaching are both valid, although the sacred scriptures are of a higher... Do you mind closing that one back there, please? Because he's going to come right up next to us. Thank you, sir. The scriptures are of a higher order because they're believed to have been revealed by God. Revealed by God. Okay, they are writings written under the inspiration of God, moved by God. All right. Whereas it's not exactly the same in the oral presentation of the kerygma. So there is a specialness to the written kerygma, which we have in like the New Testament, in the Bible. Okay? So scribo, scribere means to write. Scriptures are simply writings. You call them sacred writings if you want to, if that helps you remember. Okay? Christians wrote other writings about Jesus. I showed you the Gospel of Thomas there briefly. Actually, the people who wrote that, well, they might have been Christian. They probably were not. They were just using Jesus as a character. But, you know, you go back far enough, you'll find other writings about Jesus. You know, people wrote little histories of Jesus to fill in the gaps that, you know, they wanted to know, like, what was Jesus like as a little boy and stuff. So you'll find stuff like this. And stories about the apostles, you know, what did St. Peter do after Jesus was gone? You know, where did St. Peter go to preach? Or St. Matthew, supposedly St. Matthew went to India and places like that. Or St. Thomas supposedly went to India. St. Bartholomew, I think, went to Georgia. You know, these are all, who knows, you know. People were kind of like imagining because they wanted to know, okay? So there are writings about Jesus that are not in the Bible because people wrote about him. I mean, you know, once you know, he was an historical figure that people knew about and people cared about. People wanted to fill in gaps and understand things. It's not what's going on with these writings. I mean, these writings, the sacred scriptures, the Christian sacred scriptures are different from those. They're not just, I mean, they're written with a purpose. They were motivated by the Holy Spirit. Okay, they're not just motivated by, say, you know, interest. You know, like what was Jesus like as a little boy and stuff like that. Okay? So that's different. The Bible is different. Okay? It's a sacred writing. It comes from God, is the belief. Not direct. I told you, baby. I knew he was coming. Not directly from God, as if God was sitting there with a little pen in his hand writing stuff. Okay? But, you know, I'll get into that. But in the sense that he moved the people who wrote them to write, and he moved them, kind of inspired them how to tell the story of Jesus. But it didn't change who they were, you know. He didn't take their brains out of their heads or their experiences away from them. They were still human beings, and that's why, you know, in the Gospels or stories of Jesus, sometimes you might find things that are not historically accurate because they're trying to remember back to the time when Jesus did something, and they kind of remember something else happened. Maybe it didn't happen at exactly the same time, but, you know, people just had their memories back then. You know, it's not like they could go to the library and look in the old newspapers. They just had to remember major events that happened. Okay? So although the Catholic Church believes that God is the author of these books, that doesn't remove the human element. You still are dealing with human beings. So that's another thing that sometimes scares people. Because human beings can stink. You know, human beings cannot necessarily be trustworthy. Do you trust Google anymore? Does anyone still trust Google? I was bound and determined that my next computer was going to be an Apple. So I was so sick and tired of Microsoft. I was like, you know what? I'll save the money. I'll buy the computer. See what everyone's raving about. At least the Apple people are raving about it. And then somebody somewhere started creating viruses for Apple. In the last few years. Who knows? Maybe it's Microsoft. Who knows? I don't know. Trying to take down a rival. I don't know. And security holes were found in operating system 10 or X or whatever they're calling it. Snow Leopard, Snow Lion, Thundercat. I don't know. I don't know what they have all these weirdo names for their operating systems now. Almost like it's a game, It's like, hey, keep you guessing. What are we in now? So, I don't know, my trust factor kind of like, because Apple didn't seem to address the problems quickly enough. Kind of blasé about it. If I'm going to put out $1,500 or $2,000 on their computer with their operating system and pay later for upgrades, because you have to pay for the upgrades, I would like them to be kind of on the ball. Just even if it's a little problem, just let me know we're working on it. Not 2 weeks later, something's coming down the pike, we'll send a patch out or something. Trust human beings. President Obama. But this seems to happen to every president. You have the honeymoon period. People love you, people hate you. People love you, people hate you. People hate you, people hate you. People love you again, then they hate you again. The poll ratings go up, they go down, But that's the human element of the Scriptures. You're dealing with human beings. Yes, it would be nice if, Jesus took a few months before he went to the cross to sit down and say, okay, let me write it all out for you, baby. Spell everything out. You've got it directly from the Son of God himself. You will not need to ask any more questions. Everything shall be clear. But he didn't. He relied on a bunch of men who eventually wrote these messages, passed these messages on and wrote them down. Men who loved Jesus. Men who hopefully were listening to Jesus and not chewing gum. But you never know. I'm picking on you, but you never know. I'm making a point. You don't know. How do you know that all 12 of the... Well, we know one of the 12 didn't care about Jesus because he handed him over to his enemies, yes? Judas Iscariot. How do you know the other 11 were... Every word Jesus was... Jesus burps, and they're like, oh. What? What's the message in the burp? What did Jesus... Maybe he's hungry. Oh, he's hungry for my soul. Again, the life of Brian, Follow the shoe. No, follow the gourd. Yeah, people come up with all these crazy... Anyway, it's my own little joke. If you don't know it, don't worry about it. He knows what I'm talking about. Don't you, J-Man? So, you get kind of scared because you're dealing with people, human beings. But that's what we got. Okay? So we've got our Gospels, which hopefully you're reading. These are writings that deal with Jesus. And the Kerygma, what is the one message? If you sift away all the stuff, the other stuff, the stories, the preaching, what is basically the Kerygma of the church? What about Vulgata? Ooh, that's kind of cool. I want to put that on. Oh, yes, because that's the Isaiah scroll. This is our earliest book of the Old Testament. Dates from, as you can see, from the 200s in the 300s BC. It's called the Isaiah scroll because it is a scroll. It was rolled up, a scroll. Begins over here because it's in Hebrew, and they read right to left. Custom, tradition, that's their custom. And it's the book of the prophet Isaiah, a prophet called Yeshaya, Isaiah. I think it's complete. I think it's the complete. But anyways, it's still our earliest evidence for the Old Testament scriptures, of any biblical writing, Old Testament, Christian, or Jewish. found at a place called Khirbet Qumran, a bunch of caves, Qumran, a bunch of caves near the Dead Sea in southern Israel. Hidden there, just kept, because Jews, out of devotion, don't destroy the Scriptures. Because they believe they come from God, Jews do not destroy the Scriptures. They take them and they bury them, or they put them in a container and keep them somewhere. Okay, even to this day, Jews do that. When the Torah scroll, the scroll they have in their synagogue that they read from every Saturday, once it gets old and frayed and falling apart and it's not usable anymore, you got to get a new one. But you can't just throw the old one out. Why? Because it has the name of God written on it. The name of God. And to do that would be to show disrespect to God. So they bury them. Put them somewhere. So Jews have been doing this for a long, long time. Thank God for that, because we were able to find these documents. Archaeology, evidence, okay? And because it's so old, you can compare it with later Hebrew texts of Isaiah and see where they're the same and where they're different, you know? You can see how closely they followed, okay? How accurate they were in copying the other texts of Isaiah, the previous texts of Isaiah. Interesting. Or at least I find it interesting. Oh, Mr. Dunn. I'm in a loop, sorry. Da-da-da-dee. La-da-da-doo. La-da-da-da. Did I go? Yes, I did. Number 4, you have sacred tradition. Calm. It's a long day. Don't worry. The break is coming up. Don't worry. What are our sources for Jesus? Jesus himself. Then what other evidence we can bring together? Archaeology, manuscripts, etc., and so forth. Those testimonies. We have the preaching about Jesus of the church, the kerygma. We have that preaching that comes down to us either orally, through oral preaching, like at any church, you know, with a minister or a priest talking to you. We also have written works. That preaching has been written down in a special way, and it's called Scripture. And now we come to the last, which is interpreting it. Okay, so interpret it, which is not the same as preaching the gospel, but now you have to explain it. What did Jesus mean when he did or said something, or the Bible says something? Okay, and this is magisterium. Mestre, right? In Portuguese, mestre? Mestre? I looked it up. I'll go to Google Translate. Let's see. Maestro in Spanish, maître in French. Da-da-da-dee-dee-dee-dee. Let's see, what's it in Portuguese? I thought it was mestre, but we'll find out. Set up Chrome, no thank you. Let's see what we got going here. There we go, translate. English. We want to ever play around with this? We have a lot of fun with this. I wish they'd add Klingon. Bing has Klingon. I like that. Teacher. Professor. But I like this one. O mestre. Well, it says master. Okay. But you see, I like mestre better because magister from Latin. It comes from magister in Latin. Let's see what it is in Greek. Whoops. English teacher. Didaskalos? Or daskalos. Daskalos. Interesting. The ancient word is didaskalos. See, Korean. What's Korean? Sungsang. Sungsang? Sungsanin. Thank you. I appreciate that. What's it in Haitian Creole? Ooh, that's cool. Prophecy. Ooh, interesting. Cool. I love to play around with that. Alrighty. So magister, teacher. Magisterium, the authority of being a teacher, which the church claims for herself. You don't have to believe that. That's just how the Catholic Church rolls. That's how she sees herself. So that's how she's going to act. Okay, well, who the hell's the Pope? Who the hell's the Bishop? Well, they think they're magistri. They think they're the interpreters of the kerygma. And they're going to act that way. Whether you want them to or not, they're going to act that way. Whether you understand it, whether you agree with it, whether you like it, don't like it, that's their belief. They're going to act like that. And if you're a Catholic who believes that, as I do, as a Catholic theologian, then what they say, not who they are, because I don't follow Pope Francis, I'm a follower of Jesus the Christ, but I believe he has the authority from Christ to interpret. And not just interpretation is only part of the battle, making sure that that interpretation is faithful to what Jesus meant. It can't just be any interpretation. Like how the Pope feels about something, you know. I mean, and it's not just the Pope, it's all bishops. It's not just the Pope of Rome, but all bishops. John Myers here in Newark, Arthur Serratelli over in Patterson, my Patriarch Stratoslav, but my bishop is here in the United States is Stefan down in Philadelphia. I hope they're good and righteous men. I pray for them. You know, we pray. If you're a Catholic, you pray for the Pope and the Bishop at every Mass. And given recent history, they need prayers. Ms. Reen, they need prayers. Ever think about that? Praying for your parish priest? Praying for them? That they'll be good men? Be a good man? Not a jerk? Or if your priest isn't a jerk, that he'll be a better person? Maybe a saint? Maybe a saint? Maybe a holy priest? A saintly priest? Does that cross your... No. Well, ask God. You want better priests and bishops and deacons? Ask God for them. So, I mean, go ahead.
Can you explain the distinction again between custom and tradition?
Custom and tradition. There is no difference, sir. They're synonymous.
Okay.
Explain that. Unpack that for me, Ms. Kibit. Explain my answer. Why did I say that? Are you cold? Are you kidding me?
No.
It's going to go up to like 80 today. I'm sweating.
I get cold fast.
You get cold fast? Whew. I bet you were, if you were on the equator, you'd still be all bundled up, wouldn't you? You'd be down in Ecuador, and you'd be like, ooh, turn the heat on. Okay, Ms. Kivett. He asked, what's the difference between custom and tradition? I said, there is none. They're synonymous. You teach me now. No, I spent like an hour going over it. I spent like an hour. Mr. Lemba, what do you think?
Your question is, why are they the same?
Yeah, he wants to know what the difference is. I said there is no difference in what he just said between custom and tradition.
Like the Thanksgiving example you gave last time, a custom and tradition of Thanksgiving is having turkey. We don't know why, but that's just a custom and it's a tradition.
Okay,
and
good.
That's an example of a custom and tradition. As for why they're the same,
the words?
So, yeah, it's just, it's an...
Yeah, they mean the same thing. You could say custom. You could say sacred. Don't go there, Mr. Dunn. You'll confuse the issue. Custom, tradition, habit, a way of doing something. It's anything that has been passed on. Okay, handed on. Okay, so it's been passed on to us. Interesting that you remembered all the way back to the last class. You didn't remember any of the examples I gave just a few moments ago.
the Thanksgiving one's there.
That's okay, sir. Thanksgiving high five, baby. These are just things that were passed on. Go ahead, sir.
But I think that's the part that I was asking about, the difference between sacred tradition and, because you said it before, you said sacred, and it sounded like you were going to say custom, you said tradition, not custom, sacred tradition.
Yeah, because I wanted to make sure. The difference is this. Why is it? What makes these things that were handed on sacred? Because there are religious things that are handed on that they're religious. You could say they're sacred, they're holy, but they're not sacred tradition. What color the Blessed Virgin Mary wears in a picture or a statue of her, like I was talking about before, that's a custom. It's based on the culture. Okay, if you see pictures, for example, I have pictures of the Virgin Mary, Our Lady of China, and she's dressed up in Chinese garb. The color blue would mean nothing to the Chinese, because it's not part. They have the color blue, but it's not part of the Chinese royal court. It's not what the emperor wore, stuff like that. Or I've seen, pictures of Jesus painted as if he were a Native American, like, an Apache or something. And he's beardless. And so, because, facial hair apparently is not genetically common amongst some Native American groups. So they wouldn't picture Jesus with a full beard, although he probably did have something because he was a Jew, and you weren't supposed to cut the sides of your, He might not have had a beard. You don't have to have a full beard. It depends on how strictly you interpret it. But you cannot cut the temples of your hair. Okay, that's in the law. But it doesn't say you have to have a full beard. So who knows what Jesus had, That cross, the Romans crucified in different ways. That's probably close to the way they crucified Jesus, with some modifications. How they crucified his feet, or if they crucified he probably did crucify his feet. These are things passed on that are of religious value, okay, but, it's not essential to my belief. The fact of how Jesus was crucified, this is something where I kind of butt heads with like Jehovah's Witnesses. See, I love these people. These people that knock on your door, you look outside, peek, peek. Mormons. You fling open the door. What? Would you like to live forever in paradise on earth? I'm a Buddhist. Boom. You're not. You're Catholic, but you're a Buddhist at that moment. See how easily we deny the faith, sir? See how easily Christians deny their faith? When it just bothers them. When you're bothered, you're a Buddhist. But anyway. But that's okay, because the Jehovah's Witnesses have little books which gives all the answers people will give them at the door, and it tells them they're supposed to have the responses they're supposed to memorize. So if someone says, I'm a Buddhist, they have a whole list of things. Oh, you are a Buddhist. Well, did you know that in Sutra... No, I'm not really a Buddhist. I'm a Catholic. Oh! So you are a Catholic. Well, if you don't want to burn in hell... Anyway. But Jehovah's Witnesses have this belief that Jesus was not crucified this way. They believe that since the Greek word for cross... a little dusty there, eh, Jesus? Kind of says it all. Anyways, the word for cross in Greek, which is stauros, it's used for the cross, but it means literally in Greek a stake. It's like a stake put in the ground, which makes sense because that's how the Romans crucified. You put the stake and you'd have the stauros, which would be stationary. Okay, it wasn't like Mel Gibson or all the other movies you've probably seen, Son of God, or other movies you might have seen about Jesus. Okay, where he carries the whole cross there, they lay him down on it, or as Mel Gibson, Jesus crawls to it, baby, give me that cross. And Jesus is on the cross. They nail him to the cross, and then they pull the cross up and they put it in. No. It's not efficient. These are soldiers, people. You know, you want to do things efficiently, you know. You want to crucify. I mean, the Romans sometimes crucified thousands of people over a period of days. You know, you want to get, that's work. You know, you want to get that done. So the stauros was stationary, it was just there, and what the person carried was the patibulum, or the cross beam. So that's probably what Jesus carried to the cross, because that's what all people carried. You carried your own beam there. The Romans weren't going to carry it for you. Okay? And then what? They hoisted you up there. They crucified you and hoisted you up, put you in place. So the Jehovah's Witnesses have this belief that, somehow, somewhere along the line, way back when in Jehovah's Witness history, they discovered that stauros means stake. But then why isn't Jesus just shown on the stake? Why has he got the crossbeam? The Catholics. Somehow with the Jehovah's Witnesses always comes back to the Catholics. The Catholic Church, the whore of Babylon. Yes, that deceives the nations. I don't know what big deceit there is in the cross, in which version of the cross, but whatever. Apparently, that's the Catholic cross. Jesus was really crucified just on the stake, with his hands up like this, with one nail. Okay, and at that point, I'm like asking the Jehovah's, the missionaries at my door, so. They don't seem to ever come back to that one. That's not in their book. What? But doesn't that mean something to you? That you've been lied to? No, maybe you have better historical information than people have, and you're right. You're right. It was just a stake. Unfortunately, you have to explain the fact that in the Gospel accounts, Jesus is said to have been carrying the cross there, which is doubtful that he was carrying the stauros. He was carrying the patibulum, the cross beam. You also have to explain the fact that when Jesus, the risen Christ, appears to his followers after having risen, it says that he showed them the mark of the nails in his hands, which, if he were crucified like this with one nail, which they even show you pictures. They even, some Jehovah's Witnesses painted a picture of how it really looked, with the one nail. I don't know. Would they use two nails instead of one? Maybe, I guess. But the fact that there's a plural there implies that Jesus was crucified with two nails, which this makes more sense from thinking about it. So don't turn these people away. These people are fascinating. They're human beings. They're there to convert you. Fine, I'm there to convert them. Big deal, So I want them to become Catholics. I want them to join the whore of Babylon. Start wearing makeup. Start dancing. Start doing all those things that you're not supposed to do. Smoke. No, you don't smoke. No. This is good stuff. This is information, people. Okay. So that's a custom, a tradition. If it somehow turned out to be right, and there is evidence that sometimes the Romans did crucify that way, just, when they didn't have a crossbeam and would crucify a man like that, hang him from the cross, okay? If they could produce some archaeological evidence tied to Jesus, that's the way, fine. I guess we'll have to change our crosses, okay? But I think that you might be like, well, why does anyone even think about this stuff? Don't you people have too much time on your hands? What does it matter? Well, I don't know. I don't know. When the asteroid comes and is flying towards our planet and we're all going to die, Ms. Girardi, you're right. I might be like, what the hell does it matter? Why did I waste my time thinking about this? But, I like to think about these things. And for some reason, for the Jehovah's Witnesses group, it matters to them. It tells me they've been lied to by my church, or that Christianity has been manipulated by the Catholic Church. To me, it seems kind of paranoid. What's the manipulation here? It's a custom. It's a tradition. Now! The Jehovah's Witnesses also believe that Jesus is not God. He's not even the Son of God. There's actually Michael the Archangel, who became flesh as Jesus of Nazareth, purely a man. Well, an angel who became a man, but nevertheless, purely a man. And then when he rose from the dead, the resurrection was kind of like this, kind of misting away, or kind of floating away, where Jesus, the human Jesus, kind of disappears, but he becomes Michael the Archangel again in heaven. Okay, his work is done, I guess you could say. So he goes back to his day job. He had his, other job, part-time job as Jesus of Nazareth, but St. Michael the Archangel is back in his day job. That's how I try to understand the theology. Okay? But Jesus is purely a man. There's no Trinity, there's no Father with a Son, with a Holy Spirit. There's nothing like that. So now we're getting into sacred tradition. Because if you could show me that, if the Jehovah's Witness could sit down with me and show me from maybe the Bible or other evidence, archaeology, historical evidence, that, the Bible is wrong. The original Jesus thought he was just a man, said he was just a man, or acted like he was just a man, and here we can show you how later Christians added on all these beliefs and made him into a divinity. Say something like that. That's a theory. Okay? It's not the only theory, but that's a theory, that Jesus was totally a human being and then became a god. Of course, once again, Mr. Al-Duhi, who did that? Who did that to Jesus? Who made him into a god? Who took Jesus of Nazareth and made him into the Christ, God's Son? Who did that? Same people who did the cross. Who did it? Mr. Al-Zawagi. Yeah, or more specifically, no, not the Jews. We'll get to the Jews. We'll blame the Jews for other stuff later. But Mr. Valkovic, who? What's our other choice? The Jews? No, not in this case.
The Romans?
Not the Romans. Not the Romans. Another group of Jews.
But they're not called Jews?
Miss Souder, you're shaking your head.
I have no idea. Gentiles?
Yes. Well, who do Jehovah's Witnesses believe have deceived us about the form in which Jesus was crucified?
Catholics?
Yeah. It always comes back to the Catholics or the Jehovah's Witnesses. Come on, people, get with the program here. Follow the line of reasoning. Okay, it's always the Catholic Church. So yes, it's the Catholic Church that changed Jesus into God for the Jehovah's Witnesses in their story of history. Now that's significant. I mean, I can't think of any reason why how Jesus was crucified would have a theological problem for me. He still was crucified. If I believe Jesus died on the cross for my sins, he died on the cross for my sins, period. That's sacred tradition. That is part of the essence of the message about who Jesus was and what he did. Okay? How he was crucified is a tradition, small t, a custom that's passed down. I think it's right. I think that's how he was crucified. Not exactly like that, But if my belief in Jesus as God's Son is wrong, if I have been deceived on that, or that has been misconstrued by the magisterium, the interpreters interpreted incorrectly and turned a perfectly, purely human being into a God, well then that's affecting sacred tradition. That's affecting the essence of who Jesus is and was. Because he either is something or isn't. Just like you, You're either male or female. You're not, well, unless you're a hermaphrodite. Those poor people. I don't even want to think about that one. Anyways, go with it. They're the exceptions that prove the rule. Okay? Sorry, I don't mean to offend the hermaphroditic community, if any hermaphrodites are here, but, and I'm serious, I don't mean to offend anybody. But, you're basically male or female, okay? Yes, you can get a change of sorts, surgical changes, But if I take a swab of the inside of your mouth and test your genes, they're going to come back, what is it, XX chromosome for women? They're going to come back female. So I'll know, you might not have the bits anymore, and you might have gotten some implants and stuff like that, okay, and you've let your hair grow, but if I do a DNA test on you, baby, I got you dead to rights. You're a male. I got you. You're a man. Okay? Whatever gender you want to create. Okay? That's fine. I'm not getting into that whole gender politics thing. I'm just saying the DNA won't lie. Okay? That's where we're getting into serious stuff. Because if Jesus, he either was or he wasn't. If he wasn't God's son, then he's just another human being. Well, why am I listening to him then from any other human being? What makes him special from any other human being? So just because I love Jews? I don't love their food. I'm not a big kosher fan. But I love Indian food. And the Indian gods are kind of cool. They don't have full beards, though. See, my God has to have a beard. I can't worship a God that doesn't have a beard. And if you look at the Indian gods, Vishnu, Shiva, they've got little mustaches, but not beards. So I don't know. Jesus at least has a beard. I got to worship a God with a beard. Come back in 10 minutes, please. Do you mind, sir, opening that window again, please? Thank you. It's not bothering you, is it? No, Mr. Artie, no? Okay, thank you. His layman is hot. Or cold, I should say. Come on. Who?
Floyd Mayweather was just arrested for attempted murder.
Who's that?
Boxer.
Oh. Oh.